2017. My name is Kuldip Randhawa. I live in Surrey, BC, British Columbia, a province of Canada, a nation that's considered at the forefront of human rights. I have posted a number of videos on YouTube concerning the frauds that are taking place in British Columbia. And some of the reasons why these problems occur is a conflict of interest, which is the subject of this video. I'm making these videos so I can share the information with other self-representing litigants so that they can avoid spending money going to trial on a matter that needs to be settled out of court, especially where you have a system of justice where fraud is commonly taking place and is based on corruption and the courts are dysfunctional, which is basically my experiences in court for the last 10 years. So what is a conflict of interest? When you go to a lawyer, the lawyer will tell you essentially that the lawyer has not represented the other side that is being sued. Because if he had, then obviously that's a conflict of interest, because you can't share information with you that the lawyer now has shared from the other side. Because that lawyer has represented the other side, he has pertinent information about that client, and so it would be improper to continue with this litigation with the client that's seeking representation. So that is one definition of what a conflict of interest is. And so the lawyer will basically cover himself by disclosing this to the client or potential client, so that if the matter goes to the Law Society of British Columbia, then he can say, well, there was no conflict of interest and this was disclosed to the client. But what the lawyer will not tell the client is the other conflict of interests that exist. The reason why a conflict exists are many. And often in a province such as British Columbia, where corruption is considerable, where a person who has been victimized by the legal system, the information is shared amongst other lawyers. So there's a certain prejudice which has been created within the mind of the lawyer. In not taking the case, that is also a conflict of interest in which the person who requires legal representation is now prejudiced. There is another conflict of interest where a lawyer will take the case and he will deceive the client. Deceiving the client so that certain sums of money can be made and a certain position is given. They're very convincing. They have the good way of convincing people, because that's one of their tasks, is to convince the judge when they go to the court. But when they go to the court and they convince the judge with the knowledge of the fraud, well, then that is not a lawyer. That is a person that's breaking the law. It doesn't matter how smart you are and how presentable you are, and you have ties and black coats and whatever, white wigs, and it doesn't really matter. Once you've broken the law, it's there. It's done. The respect has gone. And so that is a conflict of interest, going to court and telling lies. And so the client has now been prejudiced because he's been told a story of how the lawyer is going to win the case for him. And then at the 11th hour, the client is presented with a bill. That's delayed, and sometimes that's not disclosed to the client. And so mistakes are made during this process, and some of those mistakes are corrected because now the client is smart enough to know that the advice that's been given to him is improper. So he writes to his lawyer and says, this doesn't make sense from a legal sense. So you're paying the lawyer for advice which is illegal. Under those circumstances, the lawyer should say, I'm sorry, I've made a mistake. You're right. And I should not be charging you the full rate because I've made a mistake and you have been prejudiced in this matter and the matter has been delayed. That never happens. So when a lawyer does not disclose to his own client the truth, that is a conflict of interest. because the services are now not being provided to the client who is placing his trust in the lawyer. And so when the problem is considerable, which I would say it is in my case, because I believed in the legal system and I went to court and I've been going there for a number of years, now the problem is considerable. I think it's too far gone that the lawyers are now told to stay away from Mr. Randhawa. And when that happens, a lawyer may take the case, because now if the client goes to the lawyer and tells him the whole story, he knows the person is not going to take the case, so he's hired in some capacity because he needs a lawyer. He even pays the money to the lawyer. And then it's later realized that this guy's been declared vexatious, something which is kind of a signal within British Columbia to stay away from these people, because that's the court's way of saying this guy has been victimized by the system. He is exposing the frauds. He is trying to correct a corrupt system, and we don't want that changed. We want to carry on the way it was in the good old days. The good old days is when the First Nations people were attacked upon. The women were raped. In some cases have still not been solved. They want to enjoy the past, I guess. This is not how it should be. Canada is changing, but the change has to be rapid in order for Canada to continue at the world stage as being a nation at the forefront of human rights. And so the conflict of interest also is where a judge knows that a lawyer has lied to the court. There's an oath that is taken. Judicial Council can very easily investigate these judges if they wanted to. But they're not going to, because that would bring down the system. So people think, we'll carry on coming to the court and hopefully the system's going to change if a person makes clear arguments. Despite making clear arguments to a number of judges in the Supreme Court of British Columbia, I'm finding that some of the judges there need to be removed and impeached. That's the only way that the system can be corrected. And when the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court does not remove these judges because he now knows that something has happened, and a person doesn't matter whether you're a lawyer, a judge, or a Chief Justice, if you know a crime has been committed in court and you do not speak out, that is a conflict of interest, because you are not fulfilling your duties, your obligations that is required under law. So the conflict of interest sometimes involves deceiving both parties on both sides. They want to carry on with the litigation, prolong it. They want to delay it. The more delay it is, the more money is going to be made. So where the lawyer is looking after his own pocket, that's a conflict of interest. Because we are told to be innovative in the real world. We talk about innovation so that we don't have to spend extra amounts of money when things can be solved with half the money that's required to solve a problem. It is not difficult to change a system if the desire is there. If the will of the people have been corrupted for so long because everyone is just looking at the bottom line, or their only focus is to be in power and not serve the people, where a judge does not want to do justice, where the Attorney General of the court services knows there's a problem within the court system and does not take any action. When a person is arrested, it is publicly known. When a person is released from the jail who has committed a serious crime such as child abuse, that problem is openly available so that further victims do not occur. Further children are not raped by this person who potentially has not been corrected by the system of going to the jail. The person will still be an evil person. In the same way, when there is a crime taking place in the court, the persons who are committing the crimes have to be held accountable under law. If you commit a crime, you have to be punished. The conflict of interest is to conceal the frauds. I think I've said enough. Should other people wish to contact me, I'm appealing to the politicians and the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau to take positive action. My email is kuldiprandhawa5@gmail.com. That's KULDIPRANDHAWA5@gmail.com. God bless.